Welcome everyone to the Wakem Universe, my self-created universe for fans of Marvel, DC, and so much more. My name is Wakem, and I'm here asking a question that I'm sure will get me booed off the internet. Is Iron Man more of a villain than a hero? Now before you start feverishly typing some hateful things in the comments below, I'm not saying Iron Man is solely a villain because obviously he's done his fair share of good in the MCU. However, I think if we were to take a closer look at Tony Stark's characters and actions, we might see that Tony is more on par with being a villain than a hero. Maybe the MCU's greatest villain has been in front of us from the very beginning. There is a fine line between being a hero and being a villain. In many MCU films, we see a protagonist fighting their antagonist who isn't much different from them. It's a common way for writers to show that it doesn't take much to change a character's projection in life. It only takes a few small choices and paths of life to separate a hero from a villain. While it's bold to say that Tony Stark's Iron Man is a villain, I think if we take a closer look, we might see the line between being a hero and a villain is blurred. So please, stick around till the end of the video, and if you still aren't satisfied, then you can go ahead and verbally assault me in the comments below. As we all know, Iron Man kicked off the MCU and laid the groundwork for future films and essentially birthed Marvel's cinematic universe. It only makes sense for us to start with the MCU's first movie, Iron Man. In Iron Man, it's hard not to fall in love with Tony Stark's character. He's incredibly self-obsessed and plays by no one's rules except for his own. He's nothing like other heroes we've seen on the big screen before him. I'm thinking if you're watching this video, you've seen the first Iron Man, so I'm going to skip to the end. Instead of growing into the hero role, he just has to take credit for what he did as Iron Man. He reveals his secret identity to the public to further inflate his ego without giving it a second thought. He doesn't care that revealing his identity to the world puts many people in danger, especially his loved ones. But that's the thing about Tony that we love. He doesn't listen to others and doesn't think twice about his decisions. It's this exact mindset which leads to him continuing down a path that could be argued as the path of a villain. Tony's immaturity and recklessness continued in the second Iron Man, which isn't too noteworthy honestly, sorry War Machine, but it all changed with the first Avenger movie. You see Tony grow as a character throughout the movie and finally prove he is in fact a hero. He was prepared to sacrifice himself to save millions in New York, which is something we can all agree a hero would do. This movie really ties together Tony's story from being a selfish man-child we met in the first Iron Man movie to an actual hero. However, after the attack on New York, Tony's villainous ways start to truly take form. In Iron Man 3, Tony's past mistakes catch up to him and he creates the main villain Aldrich Killian. This is a common theme in comic book movies where the hero creates their villains, so I'm not going to shame Tony for that. It's what follows this movie where his descent into becoming a villain takes place. At the end of the movie, he retires, but his obsession with saving the world and his distrust of other heroes saving the day instead of him throws him right back into the fold. Then we have Avengers Age of Ultron, where Tony's real journey to becoming a villain sets in. He's a terrible team player, a liar, and proves to be untrustworthy to his team throughout the entire movie. He created Ultron, the main villain. But instead of learning from his mistake he just made, he creates yet another AI. So to put out a fire, he solves his mistake by setting another fire, which had the potential to be even worse than the first one because he thinks he's in the right. But isn't that a common characteristic of a villain? Villains are typically someone who thinks they're right and does everything in their power to prove it to others without ever listening to others. Does that sound like anyone else we know? Fast forward another year to Captain America Civil War, where we see Tony recognizing his mistake in creating Ultron and clearly feeling remorseful about it. To make himself feel better, he supports the Sokovia Accords, which puts the government in charge of the Avengers. Tony essentially makes a deal with the devil to help himself feel better about what went down in Sokovia. He splits the Avengers team up and fulfills his destiny of not being able to stop the universe's upcoming threat, Thanos. And if that isn't bad enough, he recruited a 15-year-old boy and equipped him with military-grade weaponry to fight his battle. As much as we love SpiderMan and we're thrilled to see him enter the MCU, I think we can all agree this was a weird move to say the least. And don't even get me started on giving Peter Parker full control over Edith, the ultimate tactical intelligence system with the capability to wipe millions off the earth with a drop of a hat. Like I said before, it's common for heroes to create villains in their own movies. And I could see how we could forgive Tony since that's common in superhero storylines. But Tony proceeded to create villains for other heroes. He created Spider-Man's villain Vulture by initiating damage control and putting many of the small guys out of work. Because Tony took his job from him, Adrian Toomes got started in his life of crime to make ends meet. Later, Tony also created Mysterio because he was a terrible boss. Actually, Mysterio was the leader of a full team of disgruntled employees. I could understand if Mysterio was the only one, but he isn't, so maybe Tony is to blame after all. Now let's circle back and talk about the last two Avengers movies, starting with Avengers Infinity War. There was one decision that Tony made in this movie I thought was noteworthy. After fighting off Ebony Maw, Doctor Strange wants Tony to bring them back home, but Tony convinces them to go back to Thanos' homeworld, Titan, instead. It isn't soon after this decision where crap seriously starts to hit the fan. I think we can all agree that the fight against Thanos would have been much different if the Avengers were united, but instead of going home they go to Titan because that's what Tony wanted. If Tony had swallowed his pride and reunited the Avengers, even after the events in Civil War, it would have single-handedly changed the trajectory of the MCU. His decision to Titan may have sealed his fate and hurt many other heroes too. Now let's talk about Avengers Endgame. I'm sure a lot of you would say he saved the entire universe, but I would argue that he didn't. Yes, after an epic fight, Tony snapped his fingers with the Infinity Gauntlet, but you're really telling me that in the 14,605 different timelines Doctor Strange saw, that Tony only sacrificed himself in one timeline? Based on what we saw in previous films, Tony is always prepared to make the ultimate sacrifice. So did Doctor Strange really only see Tony sacrifice himself once? Probably not. It's because Tony didn't beat Thanos. Thanos beat Thanos. I know that sounds weird, but hear me out. In Endgame, Thanos changed his vision. In the beginning of the movie, he sees that the universe is ungrateful for him eliminating half the universe, and he changes his mission. The directors of Avengers Endgame, the Russo brothers, commented on this as well. In Infinity War, we saw a merciful, philosophy-like Thanos, but in Endgame, we see a Thanos who wants to destroy everything in his path. In Endgame, he was referred to as Warrior Thanos, where in Infinity War, he was referred to as Philosopher Thanos. His change in vision is what gave the Avengers a fighting chance in Endgame. He went from the mindset of a savior of the universe to one obsessed with vengeance. Thanos beat Thanos, not Iron Man. If anything, Tony paved the path for Thanos to be victorious in Infinity War. Now I understand that might not be good enough for you devoted Marvel fans, and that's okay. If you still think Iron Man saved the day, I have one final argument. Tony convinced Bruce Banner in Avengers Endgame before he snapped to have everyone come back but not change the past 5 years. Think about what has happened over the course of 5 years. Several billion people were snapped back into existence on Earth. I can't even imagine what the people who were blipped came home to. Their jobs were gone, their house is probably someone else's, spouses remarried, and people suffered for 5 years. Yet again, because Tony wanted to do something for himself, it really screws up the rest of the world. I understand he wanted to do it for his daughter, but he ruined so many people's lives by not resetting the clock. Maybe it was irreversible, and them taking 5 years to beat Thanos was an absolute point in the timeline, and it had to happen. If that's not the case, Iron Man is the biggest bad of the MCU, even from beyond the grave. I'm sure we'll continue to see more repercussions for Tony's actions in the future, especially regarding his tech ending up in the wrong hands, which will be heavily addressed in Disney Plus's Armor Wars starring War Machine. Whether you've agreed with some of what I've presented in this video or not, there is no denying that Tony's decisions greatly impacted the MCU, and not always in the positive way we thought. Think about it. Back in Avengers Age of Ultron, if Tony told his team his idea of creating Ultron, and they told him it was a terrible idea, and he actually listened, there wouldn't have been any Sokovia deaths, which means no Sokovia Accords. There wouldn't have been a civil war that divided the team, no recruiting a minor, there would have been no Vision, which meant the Mind Stone would have been better protected with Avengers. All of this would have made Thanos' mission a lot more difficult against a much more united front. If by the end of this video you are still okay with Iron Man committing treason several times over, drinking and armoring, creating a mass amount of villains, encouraging child endangerment, dabbling in some murderous revenge, and being a bad boss and mentor, then I guess Iron Man is a hero after all. As I said at the beginning of this video, there is a line between a hero and a villain, and that line often gets blurred. Without Tony Stark, the MCU wouldn't be what it is today, and he is one of the best storylines of arguably any big screen character. All too often in books, movies, and TV shows, a character changes from being selfish to selfless, which somehow erases their past deeds. The MCU did a great job of showing that just because you become good, it doesn't get rid of all your past deeds or the people you had to step on along your journey. Tony is always cleaning up after his messes. For every Ultron, he creates a Vision. I had a great time analyzing Tony Stark's Iron Man through a different, non-traditional lens, and I hope you enjoyed it too. This video took a while to create and required a lot of research. If you liked the video and are interested in seeing more videos like this, then please hit that like button and subscribe. The more support I get, the more content I can create and gear towards you guys. I want this channel to continue to grow and create an amazing online community with similar interests, but I can't do that without your help. So please subscribe and comment if there's something specific you'd like me to cover. I hope to see you all in the Wichem universe again soon. Peace.